Hi everyone, it's Soviet Bear. Today I have a special guest, Joaquin from Serbia. He's in Serbia. So, Joaquin, last week uh, there were parliamentary elections held in Serbia, and since it has been almost a week from these elections, uh, what are the results right now? Can you tell?
The results, were that the incumbent party has retained power. They reached about 50% of the vote, and all the other parties did significantly worse than that. Then after them, you had the Socialist Party, and then you had two different democratic parties. They had split, and those were the only parties that reached census. All of the other more populist parties failed to reach census, and this was a surprise. We had thought that one or more would hit the 5% threshold, and they failed to. One of the parties, the party I was supporting, also failed to reach census. They needed to hit 5%. They had something close to 4.5% in the previous election. We thought maybe we could hit 5%, and we did significantly worse than that. Other nationalist parties also did significantly worse.
Okay, was it really a contest between all the parties?
It was not a fair contest. What you had was the ruling party is the Progressive Party, and they've been successful at getting the country's elites and oligarchs behind them. As you know, Serbia is still suffering from similar problems that Russia had under Yeltsin, when you had sort of mafia-like oligarchs who are subservient to the West running things.
Okay, so as a Russian man who is interested in politics, in his country's politics, I would like to know: is this party who won the election, is it pro-Russian or pro-European, pro-West, pro-American?
And that is the million-dollar question, Yuri, because they are sort of like a Rorschach block. They try to appear both ways. They have support from people who are Eurosceptics, and they have support from people who like Russia. You have sort of a thing where you have Vucic is the guy who plays the more pro-Western role, and then you have Nikolic who plays the more pro-Russian role. Nikolic is fluent in Russian, and he doesn't speak English at all. Nikolic had met with Putin half a dozen times in the first 8 months, the last time that they were elected into power. So they're trying to sit in two seats.
Okay, so it is very similar to the Party of Regions in Ukraine. But as we can see, the events of the last months in Ukraine, this doctrine, this position, this stance has failed horribly. So is there a possibility of some sort of Ukrainian scenario or something similar like that in Serbia?
There is a possibility. It's something that we need to prepare for. It would be different from Ukraine because the nationalist and patriotic in Serbia are absolutely anti-NATO. They don't suffer from the mental and psychological disorders that the right sector of Ukraine does. They don't have some crazy illusion that they can, oppose the Russians and then use the EU and then turn around and, whatever they're trying to do. It's delusional in Ukraine with the privy sector. But with radicals and with patriots and nationalists in Serbia, they're fervently anti-NATO and anti-EU. So this means, Yuri, that the problem's going to come from the fake left and the center left, the liberal left. They're going to try to make alliances here in Serbia, as they did before with Otpor, as they now have with Canvas. They're going to try to they're going to try to organize around middle class identitarian politics issues like gay rights, maybe attack Serbia on its relationship with gypsies, Roma rather. They're going to try to say that Serbia is a backwards, Byzantine, Oriental culture which needs increased liberal and Westernization. And they're going to use people who might pretend to be like socialists on the left, who are pro-European Union to lead protests. But the biggest problem in Serbia and the biggest weakness, if I can say, is that there's been a failure of the patriotic organizations to organize workers, to organize labor. And so because of the situation of high unemployment and low wages in Serbia, that's a big weakness. The NATO, the EU, the United States, and Israel are going to be able to use their proxy NGOs like Canvas in Serbia to try to organize the unemployed, to try to organize maybe riots or protests or maybe like a general strike. But instead of leading to something good, it would lead to something like more enslavement. We have an example of this already happening in Bosnia. They've been trying to do like a test run in Bosnia, making an alliance with Bosniak nationalists and tried to have like a fake labor front, talk about issues related to unemployment and issues of wages and hours and working conditions.
Okay, so as well Crimea, it used to be a part of Ukraine. They had a referendum and they voted to join Russia, and Putin has signed this declaration, and so Crimea has joined Russia right now. What is Serbia's take on this? What is Serbian take on this?
Serbians, by and large, are ecstatic about this. They love that this happened. That's, and what's interesting is that even Serbians who have delusions about the EU themselves, even they are excited about the fact that Crimea has joined Russia. It's universally lauded here as a good development.
Okay, so also I want to ask you this question. What about this Serbian media? I want to ask you a question about Serbian media. Well, the major Serbian TV channels, papers, and other internet sites and radio stations, are they? What is their take on Russia as a country? Are they bashing Russia like most of the Western media, or are they pro-Russian? Do they glorify Russia, if I may say so?
Right, right. This is basically what you pick up when you live in the country and you pay attention to the media. With contemporary events, when they cover something happening in Russia, they give a positive slant. They give a positive angle. They tend to favor Russia. When they cover things happening in the European Union, they also give a positive slant. They try to give a sort of, when Catherine Ashton makes some proclamation from Brussels, they try to give it favorable coverage. Now, kind of digging deeper into the culture, when you see on TV the history-based shows or ones that deal with World War II, they take a strong anti-fascist line, pro-Soviet, pro-partisan. When they talk about Chetniks, you get a mixed result, but they tend to favor the Chetniks who ultimately made alliance with the partisans. And what you see then is a culture here that's in turmoil. And I think that the political party in power, the Progressive Party, very similar to the media, right? They're trying to like sit in two chairs. Mostly they don't talk about Russia unless they have to, but they don't give negative coverage to events in Russia. Now, there are like some smaller magazines, and you have like columnists that are total Russophobes, and they have like opinion pieces, but that doesn't reflect the majority of views of Russians. Now, I'll say a few things. Sometimes Serbians don't trust Russia, and there are different times in history that they think Russia could have done more, or that Russia did the wrong thing. They may feel a cultural and religious, Orthodox and Slavic affinity with Russians, but maybe they don't always trust everything that the Russian government does. But that's something that's not insurmountable, and it's not really too problematic.
Okay. Also, you know, last year, Serbian Ivica Dacic, he signed an agreement in Brussels, in order to somewhat recognize Kosovo, or no?
Well, it is against the constitution of Serbia to recognize Kosovo. So what they did was they made an agreement in April, but it doesn't recognize Kosovo. It was promoted in both in all the media that it in effect recognizes Kosovo. But as they say, the devil is in the details. Serbia, I repeat, officially Serbia has not recognized Kosovo, and there are many countless countries in the world also which have not recognized Kosovo. Now, the events in Crimea have somewhat been justified upon the Kosovo scenario, and I think that's where a real interesting story lies. What's going to happen next? What's going to happen with Montenegro? What's going to happen with Republika Srpska in Bosnia Herzegovina? What's going to happen, say, with the northern and northwestern parts of Kosovo Metohija? What's going to happen with the Hungarian interest in Vojvodina? So the Kosovo precedent, which Putin seems to have affirmed in the positive through the Crimea situation, the Crimea referendum, which we support, the Crimea referendum, now creates kind of recognition of new rules in international relations on this grand chessboard.
Okay, so also I want to ask you, what is people's take on the coup d'état in Kiev? What is their attitude towards the Kiev junta and towards the resistance forming in the southeast?
Well, you know, when Serbians hear about Catholic Nazis attacking people, they think about Croatia in World War II and Croatia during the Third Balkans War, starting 20 years ago. So they didn't have a very good reaction. You know, in Serbia you have nationalists and you have a radical right, but they totally oppose this sort of fake radical right that's so easy to manipulate by Western powers that we see in Ukraine.
All right. Actually, I'm out of questions right now. I don't have any questions to ask right now. Maybe it's you. You could add something, okay?
Yeah, well, you know, I have a question for you.
Go on.
You have probably read that Russians are now doing exercises in the region of Moldova, which is closer to Russia. Have you heard about this, and what do you think about that?
Russian military exercises in Transnistria?
Yes.
No, I haven't heard about them, and I think it's some sort of fake, because Russia doesn't have a common borders with Transnistria.
Right. They don't have a common border, but there is a little pocket on the Baltic which is Russia, is Königsberg, and that's part of the Russian Federation, and it's separated by what, Latvia. So it wouldn't be unprecedented. I mean, you know, Russia is not just a contiguous nation. It does have that pocket over there on the Baltic. Why could it not have a pocket in Transnistria?
Yeah, but the thing is that Transnistria is not a part of Russia. Nobody recognizes.
Right.
And Russia didn't, and it didn't join Russia yet.
Right. Well, right. Did you hear that some representatives of the Russian community in the Gaza Strip in Palestine are playing with the idea of a referendum to make the Gaza Strip part of Russian Federation?
Gaza Strip part of Russian Federation?
Yeah.
It's funny.
It is funny, yeah. I heard someone say, oh, this is a geostrategic trolling.
It's so funny.
It is very funny.
Why not say Syria wants to conduct a referendum to join Russia?
Right. Well, you know, actually, 4 years ago, Russia, I don't want to say threatened, but Russia raised the possibility that they might recognize the Serbs in Kosovo as Russians and issue them Russian passports. So I think we live in really interesting times. I mean, the world is changing at its core. The rules that have been in play in the past might have to get thrown out the window.
Yeah, okay, but right now most of Russians concerned about Ukraine, of what's going on in Ukraine, and most of pro-Russian loyalists in Ukraine, you know, in the southeast regions of Ukraine, they are really afraid. They're afraid for their very lives, and there is a self-defense units. They are now forming in Ukraine's southeast regions. People are preparing to defend themselves with guns. So most of us think it will lead to a great bloodshed.
Yeah, I predicted that as well, that in those parts of the eastern Ukraine and in the southeast where you have majority or groups of Russian population, that you would not see Russian intervention, but you would see Russian support in soft measures, the self defense and the self organization of Russian Ukrainian people against these crazy neo-Nazis that are backed by George Soros and by Israel.
Yes, right.
What do you think is going to happen?
Well, I don't know. Perhaps we should support southeast regions just like we did with Crimea. You know, send Russian troops without signs, without epaulets.
Right. Yes. Polite people.
Polite people, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, I think that that's one way of doing it. I mean, Crimea has a history of being an autonomous republic, whereas other parts of Ukraine are like just your basic oblasts. So maybe is that different?
Not to mention, in Crimea, we have our Black Sea Navy bases. They need protection against neo-Nazi Banderovцы, how they call Banderovцы, yeah, right. But I think, as we say, Russians don't leave their people in trouble.
Right.
So we will support our loyalists. You know, some of them really identify them as Ukrainian, but they love Russia and they want to be pro-Russian. They don't support these neo-Nazis, pro-NATO, right sector nut jobs.
Right. You know, I'm a supporter of Alexander Dugin, and I'm part of the Global Revolutionary Alliance. And we had comrades and colleagues in Ukraine who were Eurasianists, with us, but when the Pravi sector made its coup, they flipped sides, and we were betrayed. Some elements of our Ukrainian sections went over to Pravi sector.
Maybe that's because they are and their families, they were threatened by this right sector.
Or bribed.
So, also, it seems funny to me that Israel and the Jewish organization and the Jewish elite, they never condemned these right sector neo-Nazis, because there has been report of right sector attacking synagogues, attacking Jewish people, and it is very suspicious that Israel is silent and the Jewish elites, they remain silent about this.
Right, and what was really suspicious was when the leaders of Pravi sector made a public announcement that they support Israel, that they're against anti-Semitism, and it wasn't just like they mentioned it. I mean, it was like a total focus of their whole propaganda cycle for like a whole week, about 3 weeks ago. That oh yeah, we love Israel, we support Israel, we're not anti-Semitic, we're going to protect the rights of Jews. They sent some like rabbis and Zionists to meet with Pravi sector. They had a photo session. They had like a PR campaign, and it's like, why? Why? Well, we get into the details and we do a little digging, and we find that Israel, the neocons in Washington, the Zionists are behind this. It's not even in the interest of Europe anymore. It's just totally about the Zionist Washington power base.
Okay. So, if Ukraine will be following Syrian scenario, it will be a huge blow to both Russia and the European Union, but the US will definitely benefit from it, right?
The US has different ways it can benefit. You're right. One of the things the United States likes to do is just destroy things. Allies, they have a military-industrial complex. The United States prints its own money, and it's a totally worthless money, which only exists because the Chinese have been engaged in an epic troll for many decades. And the Chinese are holding all the cards. If the Chinese fully engage with the dollar zone, and as the BRICS nations continue to develop their GDP and their means of production, the United States is just going to be a hollowed out, rotten shell with way too many nukes, which is going to be very dangerous for the planet Earth and all of humanity.
Yeah, right. And so I think that'll do. We should We should stop right here.
Great.
Okay.